She chose to leave the U.S. to become an ISIS bride. She had a baby.
There's the question of what happens to hundreds of ISIS fighters and their families, including a former American college student.
It's become breaking news. Familiar rhetoric beamed across both sides of the Atlantic. Huda Mathana, the latest, an American woman who 4 years ago went to support ISIS and now wants to return home.
I'm just a normal human being who's been manipulated once and hopefully never again. I hope America doesn't think I'm a threat to them, and I hope they can accept me.
Except the 24-year-old, who now has a son, has been banned from returning to the US, in what some critics have called a dangerous precedent set by Britain. Donald Trump, having previously called on other countries to take back their IS fighters, took to Twitter, where else, to say he wouldn't be doing the same. I've instructed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and he fully agrees not to allow Huda Mathana back into the country. The president's words echoed today.
She is a terrorist. She's not a U.S. citizen. She ought not return to this country.
Except she is. Today, Huda Mathana's family lawyer told Channel 4 News the 24-year-old from Alabama is a U.S. citizen.
The President of the United States does not have the right and the authority to strip citizenship of Americans, no matter what horrible crimes they commit. Even those who commit the worst crimes can face our legal system, can be held accountable to our legal system, and they should not be stripped of their citizenship, nor does the government have the authority to do that. Huda Mathana is a U.S. citizen. She's not asking for a free pass. She's not just asking to come home as if nothing happened. She's asking to come and be held accountable.
This, of course, provokes a profound sense of déjà vu in the case of Shamima Begum, as her story here continues to dominate the national conversation. Today, Jeremy Corbyn criticised the Home Secretary's decision to strip Shamima of her citizenship, saying the 19-year-old not only should be allowed back to Britain, but needed support. While Sajid Javid's attempts to effectively disown the teenager have been shut down by Bangladesh after their foreign minister said it was not an option to take in Begum based on the fact her mother's Bangladeshi. Last night, the Home Secretary seemed to concede he may have to change his stance.
I would not take a decision, and I believe none of my predecessors ever have taken a decision that at the point the decision is taken would leave that individual stateless.
As Shamima's family now explore whether her baby son can legally return to Britain without her, while the teenager, like Huda Mathana, now awaits a lengthy legal battle. Two young women who have found themselves first in the middle of a media storm and now a diplomatic one.
Well, joining me now is the Conservative MP Rahman Chisti, who's a member of the Commons Home Affairs Committee. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
First of all, your reaction to the Shamima Begum case. Has the Home Secretary done the right thing?
Well, look, let me make it very clear. I've always said that the first duty of the state is to protect its citizens. And also, I was the one who pushed the government to use the correct terminology, dash, to defeat the idea, the ideology, the appeal, which is sucking at hundreds of British individuals to fight for this poison ideology entity in Syria and Iraq. So I've always taken a very tough approach. But our approach has to then also take into account what we, the United Kingdom, stand for. International rule of law, domestic law. And we also work with international partners, say if we want an international-based rule of governance. And in line with that, I think the Home Secretary on this one, who I have a huge amount of respect for, has got it wrong. I think this decision that I've seen, what's clearly is happening here is that you've had a populist decision to appeal to certain quarters. And what will happen, technically, because what the Home Secretary has said, and he said yesterday when I asked him questions in Parliament, he said, look, we will never make anyone stateless. But the reality is, by revoking it, knowing that Bangladesh will say no, because the individual concerned is a UK citizen, she's grown up in the United Kingdom. So on that basis, what will happen is in 5 months' time, he will say, hey, I acted tough. But then the courts will overturn it, which will be wrong.
Will overturn against him. When you say he's trying to appeal to certain quarters, who do you mean?
Well, look, what I'm saying is that sometimes politicians, the four political parties, and across the pond as well, they want to seem to be tough. But the reality is they don't take into account the ground reality and doing the right thing. And in this case, it may seem unpopular because looking at the video footage of the individual concerned, what she said was completely abhorrent, unacceptable. Morally, I would say don't take her back. But ethically, I've got to then see what United Kingdom stands for. International rule of law, bring her back, and accordance to our international rule of law, prosecute her and give the firmest possible evidence if she's convicted according to our legal system.
Is it this particular case you object to? Because we have seen a spike in citizenship stripping. In 2017 alone, 104 people had their British citizenship removed. So is it this case alone, or do you think there's a broader problem?
Well, what I would say is looking at this issue has raised the point about foreign fighters. And you've asked me to comment about that. 900 had gone off to Syria. About 450 have come back. And the question is, how many of those have had their citizens stripped? And how do they compare with this individual case? I would say on this individual case, what should happen? And you should speak to Peter Newman, the world expert based at King's College London. Individuals should be brought back on priority. Those who give evidence against their fellow fighters and therefore assist the United Kingdom in bringing those others to account, bring them back. If not, hold them out under exclusion orders for 2 years. Same with this individual case. And then the issue is you slowly bring them back. In contrast to France, they've taken back 120 all at once. That is wrong because that poses a real security risk. So I would say, for me, that it should be a last resort, but do it when it's really necessary in accordance to what's right.
There are some British people who have parents from an immigrant background or hold dual nationality who say that this case has made them feel like second-class British citizens. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, let me make it very clear. I voted for this legislation in 2014. I have real reservations in relation to how this has now been put into practice. Well, you know, there are cases where you have individuals who lived in both countries, and therefore one could then say they need to go back if they satisfy the criteria. But in this case, this individual has been radicalised in the United Kingdom. They have no link to Bangladesh at all. Well, in this case, it is our problem because they've been radicalised in this country, and on that basis, I would say the presumption should be for all foreign fighters to go back to their countries of origin and face trial.
But overwhelmingly, and I think YouGov did some polling today, people are in favour of the decision that the Home Secretary has taken.
Well, I would say people may be in favour, but when you're in politics, you have to make the right decisions rather than just simply do what those who shout the loudest. I've never done that in politics. I have a huge amount of respect for the Secretary of State, but also I have a great respect and also for our country and what it stands for, rule of law, an international rule of law, and on that basis, do the right thing rather than appeal to those who shout the loudest.
So why has the Secretary of State done this? Because some have suggested it's part of a leadership bid, and perhaps he in particular needs to prove that he's draconian on security because he comes from an immigrant background.
Well, I think at the end of the day you have to ask him that, and when he appears before the Home Affairs Select Committee, I'll ask him that question. But I think what I've seen quite clearly is, I used to be a lawyer before I did this job. We have to do the right thing, and sometimes it may be, not be popular, but the United Kingdom stands for the rule of law, and I think on that basis the Home Secretary on this one has got it wrong.